Welcome everybody to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football YouTube channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson. Do us a favor, click on that like button if we entertain you a smidge. And we're always going to be down with a subscribe. So like if you want to hit that subscribe button, don't do it for me, do it for Anwar. He does love the subscriber numbers, if we're being completely honest.
I'm addicted.
Anwar, it's Monday. It's Overreaction Monday. You've had a sick kid. I've had a sick wife. I've got the Sixers that I can yell at. Like there's all kinds of, I fear for what I might say about Ben Simmons after what I've already said about Ben Simmons on this channel just a few days ago. Oh, we have so many things that potentially we could overreact to, but as always, I want to give you the floor on a Monday. And first of all, good. You holding up okay?
I was on my Father's Day weekend was basically spent with being a father. So I had a sick kid on Saturday who had a temperature. Dealing with that, barely sleeping. 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, he wakes up, he just fussing, crying, all kinds of stuff, fever, very congested. Dealt with that on Sunday, was able to get him some medicine in the system. So doing better today. Typical father, he wets the bed, he comes out, like he's crying, you want to go hug, you realize now I just got pee all over myself, and you're just like, this is Father's Day, just a reminder of this is what I signed up for. So it's all good. He's doing better now. How's the wife?
It makes for good writing circumstances, right? Don't you find yourself to be freely and most, able to do your best work when surrounded by absolute chaos?
Yeah. Writing your column at like 1 o'clock in the morning, hoping that this kid stays asleep for another 3 hours or so you could finish it. Then you finally go to bed, and then he wakes up like an hour later, and you're like, oh, we're back at it. So it's all good. It was Father's Day.
Weekend was 2 notches worse than mine, but like on a 1 to 10 scale, I feel like I was at a 2. So you sound like a 0.
It was bad.
I mean, nobody died, right? That has to be a 0. The world didn't end. There wasn't like a massive earthquake or anything. So maybe that's like a 1. And I was like at a 2.5. I don't know, but like
I was texting his mom constant updates with the hope that she would just take him off my hand at some point, and she would just say, it's Father's Day. So I was like, he's really sick. He's not doing good. Horrible. Taking pictures of the thermometer. He's whiny. She never took the bait. Props to her. She's like, that's your fault.
In her mind, you wanted your son on Father's Day. You got him.
That's my overreaction.
So, yeah. Well, look, from a Texas football perspective, start us off. Give me an overreaction. I know that you've been moved by this Vegas over and under on the wins.
So there's a website called Vegas Insider, and Sukamel put something on our Slack channel about this recently. And Vegas Insider recently put something out there, Catch, that said that they believe Texas will finish with less than 8 wins. And they attribute it to the hard games that they have to play against ranked opponents this season, the hard road games that Texas is going to have. And they didn't start at 8. They said less than 8, Catch. That means they're putting Texas at a potential 7-win kind of season, maybe even less. Catch, you want to overreact. You want Austin to burn, and I'm not talking about this hot-ass summer where it doesn't seem like we're getting any rain, but you're talking about making a coaching change and finishing with less than 8. Again, Vegas Insider, I don't gamble, so I can't tell you that I know everything about them and accuracy of this and that, but I got to imagine publications like this do some sort of due diligence. There has to be some sort of something that they're putting there because they're going to accept people's money or something to that effect, right? So there's got to be something to it, right? Sometimes these gamblers know a little bit more than we do. One of the things One day we got to auction off our Slack channel, because Alex Dunlap, what he does for us on Slack is every Saturday before a game, he'll start telling us where the money line is going, and then he'll break it down and say, all these people are putting money on such and such team, which therefore means they have some information that makes them believe such and such is going to win. And Alex is great at that. So anyway, my overreaction is, can I buy less than 8 wins, Catch? My overreaction is, I think this website may be going out of business.
Well, I almost don't even know where to begin other than to say that this is ultimately a conversation about where one thinks the floor for this team can be. And I think that one of the things that you've learned in the first 6 going on 7 years in Austin covering this program is that this is, by the time we get to August, it's hard to convince people that this team has a floor that exists in reality, right? I mean, you and I've had arguments where we dared to say that Texas wasn't going to win 10 games, and people would say, have you seen the schedule? Have you seen the schedule, Anwar? We are more talented than 11 out of the 12 teams on. Have you seen our recruiting? Like, by the time we get to August, every single season, you've got a situation where Texas fans believe that their floor, the basement for their season, is one place. And in reality, it's another, which has been proven over and over and over again over the course of the last decade. You would have found very few Texas fans last year that thought the floor for this team would have been outside of the Big 12 championship game.
True.
Not winning it, but getting there.
Yeah.
If you can't get there with Sam Ehlinger as a senior and all of the circumstances that existed going into last season, when the hell can you get there? And yet it didn't happen. So it's funny because in my head, before I clicked on that link that Sukamel sent us, 8.5 for me is the correct over in my head. As someone who sits around at night 4 or 5 times out of the week, wondering about, like, what's this team going to do? And I'm thinking about all the 8.5 is my number. So, and on some days, I think it's 9. And on some days, I think it's 8. I think more days than not, I think 9. Because, you and I've had this conversation. Wouldn't Tom Herman win 9? Like, we've had that conversation. So 8.5 is my number. And that means that 8 in my head's realistic if 8.5 is my number. And I guess my reaction to all of this is, well, that's just one more away from my number. It's not that big. Like, it's not that far away from the realm of reality that could happen if Texas doesn't get good immediate quarterback play, or if that defense struggles to find a playmaker, and or if there's an injury or two. Like, this team is it's not even close to being so good that 7 to me is outlandish.
Wait, so you think for the floor, and we're talking regular season wins, right? Yeah. So the floor you think is 7.
Yeah.
I'm writing all this down. I'm writing.
That's not what I think they're going to do. But I mean, in a world where things don't come together, in a world where Texas doesn't get a pass rush, there are key injuries. Look, I'm a fan of a soccer team that set historical records this season, like less than a year ago. By the time the season was over with, they had blown everybody out. They boat raced everybody, all-time great stuff, right? And then this year, they had a run of injuries that was so bad that they had one of the worst drop-offs from one year to the next in the history of the sport. So as a fan, I have very recently seen what a real rash of injuries. I mean, we've seen it even in these NBA playoffs. I mean, the Sixers lose Danny Green, and that meant suddenly they were bringing guys off the bench to play 48 minutes in a game that just aren't good NBA players. And that kind of stuff, it impacts your season. So yes, for me, there's a world where this Texas team is a 7-5 team if a number of things went the wrong way.
I mean, I just got to ask, okay, we're talking about a healthy team, right? I mean, I just want to, before I jump in on my stuff, we're not factoring in injuries. We're just talking about from start to finish, this team's healthy.
Yeah, but I never look at any season like that. I mean, I realize that you could always play that if a quarterback gets hurt, that anybody's season will drop off. But this Texas team has so little depth. I can't say, well, assume that all 5 of their starting offensive linemen stay healthy. Because I think this is a program that if they lose one offensive lineman, the real quality of the play of that group could decline significantly, let alone 2. So, I can do that with Alabama. I could do that with Clemson. I can do that with Oklahoma. You can't do it with Texas yet. You just can't.
I think I gotta go higher for the floor. Okay. And because if the floor is 7, then Steve Sarkeesian isn't the man for the job. It just isn't. Like that.
Well, I think those two things are not connected together.
I think they have to be, because I don't know if he can coach. I look at the floor at maybe 8, but I really feel like 9 is the floor.
How many 9-win seasons has he ever had in his career?
Well, he's had 1.
Correct.
I think one time, his first year at USC.
Correct.
And that's, but catch. I mean, here's what I'm willing to concede OU. I'm willing to concede Iowa State in the conversation, and I'm willing to concede a TCU potentially. Oklahoma State that's on the road, correct? So maybe Oklahoma State. I feel this is what I think. Okay,
Louisiana's
a tough one.
Is telling people 3 months in advance.
Yes.
Hey guys, that's a real game, FYI.
Yes, he is laying the groundwork to say, listen, if this is a close game or we lose it, I told you back in June,
yes,
that this was a real team.
And
this is not the other team.
Arkansas is going to be a 4th quarter game.
Arkansas was so bad last year, Catch.
This is
a bad team.
This is me telling you I know more about this.
You might know more about Arkansas, but you know more about the history.
Texas is like Mexico and the USA. Like, there's just going to be some bad blood when some sporting events take place. Like, like when the USA and Mexico play in soccer, you can always account for a bag of urine being thrown at somebody, usually from Mexico towards a USA player. Like, same thing happens when Colorado and Nebraska play each other in football. The Colorado fans, they can't behave themselves. They got to throw urine on people. Like, Arkansas hates Texas that much. And I know that you're just going to have to trust me.
I have to trust you, because nothing on that record shows me that history matters.
So suddenly, that's half the schedule. That's half the schedule. Texas has one of the toughest schedules in the country. Didn't like some ESPN index or something come out in the last month or two that rated schedules? I think Texas was number 3 in the country.
Yeah, I don't get that.
And everybody was looking at it like, well, how can that be the case? That must say that the Big 12 is one hell of a conference. And it's like, well, you play 2 top 10 teams away from home. TCU is a game, all things being equal, if that's your 3rd toughest game, that's at home. Arkansas's away. I mean, 4 of your 6 toughest games from the season are not at your home stadium. And like, look, again.
But doesn't Kansas technically have the toughest schedule because everybody they play is actually good?
They may have had number one. But look, you're adding Louisiana at Arkansas to the schedule, in addition to where Texas gets these games this year. I mean, part of what I think really makes the schedule difficult is the fact that so many of the games are away from DKR.
I mean, but this is okay.
It's one of the reasons why I'm really lukewarm on their chances of being able to beat Iowa State in Ames.
No, I've conceded Iowa State and I've conceded OU, and I'm conceding one more. This is just
you're
my
right
thought.
though. Look, so in a world where you've conceded, hey, I'll give them 3, but I just can't see this staff, if they're supposed to be what they're supposed to be, losing 5 games this season. Anwar, I'm with you. It would be a horrible sign. It would have horrible implications, I think, on the future of Texas football. I think a lot of Texas fans, really smart Texas fans, understand that. When I went to a Houston lunch bunch 10 days ago and sitting in front of hardcore people, they understood, don't shit your pants. 7-5 would be doo-doo on the pants. I'm only saying there's no world in recent history where Texas football hasn't had a basement of 7 wins. I'm not saying that's where they finish. I'm not saying that's even within 2 games of where I think they'll finish. But part of us talking about a basement and a floor for this season is what there are going to be people who watch this who are like, are you guys crazy? How is 6-6 and 5-7 not the floor? There will be people who think that it's ludicrous.
There won't be a Texas fan that says that.
Well, no, but should Texas fans even have a vote in this conversation? They're on double secret shut the hell up probation after the last decade. I'm literally discussing on Orange Bloods the same topic again this year that I've discussed with the same people every year. And every year they go too high. And every year they try to convince me that all of the things that I'm concerned about shouldn't be things that I'm concerned about. And every year Texas underperforms. So yes, anybody who watches this video that says, whoa, 7-5, it could be worse than that. Have you guys not been paying attention? They may not be Texas fans. They're the ones without the bias, potentially. Some of them may have bias, but what that bias doesn't do is make them think automatically only awesome things all the time. And again, like, I think this is a 9-win team that, you and I before the season will debate whether or not that can be good enough for what Texas needs to do. But, I think that's pretty good. I think that would be in a world where there are no recruiting implications, right? In a world where Texas just doesn't need something more than that. I think 9-3 would be a perfectly good first year. Starting new first-year quarterback, breaking in another defense, all of the change. 9-3, go to a bowl game, win it, get to 10-3. That's a good season. Even 9-4, that's not great, but it would be a good first season. I've just seen so much bad quarterback play, Anwar. And look, the reason why I think the ceiling is higher is for the very thing I wrote about in 10 Thoughts from the Weekend. Steve Sarkeesian, almost every year of this past decade as a college football coach, has had a quarterback who at a minimum had beat the best season of almost every quarterback Texas has had for the last 25 years in its history. So Texas almost at its very best is what Sarkeesian annually does at worst at the quarterback position. That's an incredibly good place to start. If you tell me right now that Sark's quarterback play is 155 to 160 for the season, I'm 9 wins, no problem. Maybe 10. But as good as Sark's resume is, I'm the one you've been here for 6 of these seasons. The quarterback play has never been better than slightly above average at best. And we're still talking about Vince Young and Colt McCoy when those dudes are getting old because we've seen so much bad quarterback play.
It's been 7 seasons, actually, Catch.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Holy crap, this is season 8.
This is season 8. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, we're getting old. You've been here for a really long time.
My kid when I interviewed, he was a baby sitting in my lap. He's going into 3rd grade.
He's going to be dunking a basketball next year.
It's crazy, So yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me. Maybe I'm denial. Maybe it's just denial. Maybe it is hard for me to just believe. It's hard for me to accept that Steve Sarkeesian can't come in and do some of the little things that his predecessors weren't able to do and make some adjustments, some in-game adjustments that we didn't see. I thought that one of the things that was lacking throughout the last few years, I mean, Charlie, we got to throw that out, right? I thought what Tom Herman had a good team, but I thought with the difference between good and great is sometimes the little things. And I thought he didn't do some of the little things. The fact that Steve Sarkeesian says little things like the binder, like he doesn't have a binder. He's gonna call games off a gut, off a feel, and force guys to stop it. It makes you think, okay, if you make those little adjustments with the players that you have, that makes a huge difference. Doing little things like taking the points. I look at Sarkeesian as a guy, Catch, who comes in and does the very little things that maybe Tom was a little bit stubborn about. Like when you start having success, he sounds like a guy that's going to stay with it and continue with it. Is not going to say, hey, we gave Bijan a bunch of touches. Look at him go. All right, let's just go pass the ball. I mean, or man, that passing game is really working. Let's go. But you and I were on Joshua Moore watch after like 2 weeks of the season. And we're looking at it and you're like, look at Joshua Moore. This kid is balling. And then we were saying, where is Joshua Moore? Is he on the team? Is he you're asking me, is he on the sidelines? Is something wrong? Like all that type of stuff. So I look at him and I say to myself, Catch, if he's a guy that apparently could be smart enough to do the little things that wasn't done previously, then I believe that floor should just be 9 wins. Now, I'm not going to take the ceiling up to 12. Like, I'm not going to go crazy. It's interesting. I think my floor and my ceiling are really close to each other because I think my floor is probably 9 and I think my ceiling's somewhere around 10, which is probably not much wiggle room. So I'm probably in a 9 for both more than likely. But and again, this is a different nuanced conversation because if Sarkeesian can't put this team towards 9, as you talk about the ramifications past that, we need to find another team to cover because we know what the next 3 years are going to look like. It's not going to be good. But I've got to believe I can't. Maybe I'm just talking myself out of it. I can't. I might do something else in life if it's 7.
I feel like I need to save you from yourself for a second, but in saving you from yourself, I got to tell you, I'm mad at you. Let me tell you why I'm mad at you. Because I have one of 2 options. I feel like you're casting me, not intentionally, but nevertheless, here I am. I feel like people are going to watch this video and they're going to be like, look at Ketch being all negative again. 7 wins is the floor. Why is he always got to be so negative? Like, I feel like I'm getting put in this. I'm tired. I don't want to be negative. I want to be happy today. It's way more exhausting to be overly concerned and cautious than it is to just be like, let's just call it 10 wins and go nuts. But so here's my rub. Like, I'm at this place where I can feel myself going negative, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be Mr. Negative. But then, in order to avoid being Mr. Negativity, I have to lie to myself and lie to everybody else. And that is the rub that has been the bane of my existence. because every time, Anwar, you've almost ever seen me get in trouble. It's my inability to avoid just swallowing it. Just shut the hell up, right? So I'm going to do it again. I'm just not going to be quiet. I have to be true to myself.
So that own self be true.
When Charlie left, we thought that Mensa was going to be an immediate upgrade. We thought when he showed up, we thought, can't get any worse than what Charlie's already done. I mean, it can't be the same or worse as that. And, if you eliminate having somebody who can count to double digits and in intervals of 30 and can get the coin flip stuff right and generally manages games more effectively, like this team, just with that alone, they went 8 or 9 games in season number 1. That was what we thought when Tom Herman was hired. I gave that benefit of the doubt. Now, a couple of years later, we're doing the exact same thing with Steve Sarkeesian. We're saying, look, the coaching last year was rank. Look at how they did all these things wrong. And if the new staff can come in and just not do that, this team should be at least a game or 2 better. I mean, because you're just eliminating all that crap coaching. And what my experience has been in the last 10 years is that you get rid of one form of crap coaching, and it is possible that a different form of crap coaching can take effect. And this Sarkeesian, in theory, he could just bring his whole new, his crap's just different. He can count by intervals of 30, but maybe he gets other things wrong. And in 3 years, everybody knows it inside and out. And they're saying the same thing about I need to see Sarkeesian prove it. And look, here's one of the things that Texas didn't get when they hired Sarkeesian. He's not fail-proof. He's not a guarantee on the box. He's like Mack Brown when Mack Brown arrived from North Carolina, which isn't a terrible thing. He's a good head coach. He can recruit, but he is not a proven winner. He did a really good job at Washington, but they didn't win anything. He didn't stay around long enough at USC to be able to win something. So when we look at this season, I just find it impossible to give Steve Sarkeesian extra layers of benefit of the doubt that I'm tired of giving coaches in general, but especially coaches that in front of my own very eyes, I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it yet. Let's do this show 5 months from now, and I'll do that thing where I'm like, Anwar, I never have to say it again. They proved it. They proved it. Next year, we can give benefit of the doubt, and we can do, and it'll be awesome. We'll be able to look at a track record and say, they did that. But this staff hasn't done that yet. And I give Nick Saban more credit than I give anybody. So you could take all the assistant coaches at Alabama together, combined, and I will give them less credit than I give Nick Saban in a year when they win the national championship.
So basically, this Vegas insider thing is not something that you look at and say, cockamamie, as Alex would say. You say
it's not cockamamie. It's 1 game away from what I think the floor is, and it's 2 games away from where you think the floor is and the ceiling, for that matter. So, I think it's a stretch. I don't think it's the most likely outcome. But if we were doing a pie graph or something and we had to guess what the record of the team would be, there'd be a little sliver of slice in the pie that would account for 7-5. It wouldn't be the biggest piece. It wouldn't be a big piece. But in a big old piece of pie where like 50% of it is maybe 9-3 and 10-2 is, I don't know, 15%. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are. I'm making this up. I would have to think about what the pie breakdown would look like. I'm saying 7-5 has a slice. Now, that's what these people are saying. I'm saying, yeah, no, I agree. It's not likely, but there's a world where 7-5 could happen. It is not anything that it hasn't crossed my mind all year to pick 7-5 as a record. That's not where my head is. But for the basement of this program, yeah, man, 7-5 until proven otherwise.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm writing down all the record possibilities, starting from 6-6 up to 12-0. I'm wondering if I did a pie, which would be the largest percentage? Is 8-4, 9-3 potentially the largest percentage, with everything else like small, like 12-0 is probably the smallest slice. 6-6 is probably really small as well.
Yeah.
And you know,
and 8-4 and 9-3 probably take up 70% of the pie. Like maybe 9-3 is 40% and 8-4 is 30%. And then 10-2 is 15%. And that leaves you 15% more to divide amongst a perfect season, which would be really slim. Like, I think there's a better chance of 7 no, I don't know. It's a good question. Do you think there's a better chance at 7-5 or 12-0?
7-5. So
in our pie,
12-0 is. That's hard for the elite programs to do.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. If you can't see 7-5 as a floor at all, then I'm just asking because, you know, I don't know how to answer that question.
The flip side of the video catch is if they do finish 7-5, everyone's going to say I was the guy who was pumping sunshine. And they'll forget about what you
I'm
said.
The jerk.
Huh?
Look, they already think I'm the jerk. I think
that's true. That's
not an easy question to answer, I think. Which is more likely, 7-5 or 12-0? It's hard. There's no wiggle room at all. 12-0, right? You lose once, you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like there's a lot of different variations of combinations that could get you.
You should put that out on Twitter.
Oh, no.
Put a poll
I don't
out.
want to do that because people get mad at me when I do things like that.
If you put out a poll out,
else can do it.
Who?
Look, do you know that yesterday someone got mad at me so Jason did an Evan Stewart report?
Yeah.
And I just responded, Texas is going to have to play some good football to get Evan Stewart.
Yeah, I saw
People
that.
Like, why are you tainting the report? Why are you so negative? I'm like, what?
The guy did decommit. He did decommit and trying to get him back. So
I'm just saying, I live in a world, and I've come to understand my superpowers.
Yeah.
That the normal things that sometimes come out of my mouth get viewed as really negative. And I understand that. And so I'm on the watch for that. Like, I won't be tweeting out. Do you realize that yesterday I made the Arch Manning post where I was like, kind of interesting. I haven't seen any pictures. I've been over to the Bama website for Rivals. There's no mention of Arch Manning. Kind of a different deal from one week to the next, something that we've been talking about. And people are like, why are you being so negative? And it's like, no, it's just an observation of like things that actually happened. Right. I mean,
yeah, no, look, I'll be honest with you. Can I give you my overreaction? It's totally on those lines. I thought Jason's responses from every visitor this past weekend, I thought he was just so positive. My overreaction was, Jason, stop blowing smoke up my ass. Like he's talking to every kid is like, man, great visit. Like what kid's going to be like, man, that was a horrible visit. Never want to go to Austin again. Like I read all his updates, and he even talked to Malik Murphy. I'm like, you talked to Malik Murphy. What's he going to say? Of course he's going to say it's awesome. And I'm not saying I wanted someone to shit on Texas by any stretch of the imagination, but my overreaction was, man, you just gave me a bunch of predictable answers. I want to see these kids commit and see what happens, as we go over the next few months. I don't necessarily. I thought it was too easy to say that every kid liked it.
You very much sound like a don't tell me about like The labor pains just show me the baby.
That's all. Everyone, yes, Jason, and listen, Jason's our dude. He's a hard worker. He was sick over the weekend. Like, I give Jason credit for pounding that thing out. But my overreaction was there was a lot of sunshine and rainbows there, Jason Sukamel. I want to see some more guys committed.
I think the unfortunate spot that Jason gets put into after a weekend like this is historically people are used to moving and shaking after weekends like this. So they program their brains into thinking in order for this weekend to have been a success, we needed commitments. People are tired of hearing that Texas may get offensive line commitments later in the year. They want them now, damn it. And so what ends up happening is what will really matter from this weekend is what actually happens after these kids are gone. But there's a thirst and a demand. How did it go? How did it go? How did it go? That you've got to get that initial report. And typically, unless something bad happens, and so either something really great happens and a kid says, Texas is my absolute leader. And it didn't happen this weekend. That may be there. The thing from this weekend that I think was a little different than the last couple of weekends
one guy
is I don't know that Texas, there wasn't a money quote that on Monday morning you'd go to the old school water cooler and be like, did you see that thing that Evan Stewart said that we can feel really, 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 really good about? They all said nice things, but I didn't think there was a single comment that made me go, oh, that's fantastic for Texas. Nothing bad either. But the reality is Jason's trying to report on circumstances that need time to unfold.
Yeah, I keep looking through here. I could have sworn he said something about one guy said like Bama was not in the picture anymore or something to that effect. But yeah, he's in a tough situation.
I think the biggest thing that Jason mentioned the biggest thing that came out of this weekend may have been Jason talking about that Evan Stewart essentially narrowed it down to Texas and Florida as a top two. But that's caveated by he may go visit Alabama, or he is planning to visit Alabama this season. And I think both Jason and I believe that before it's all said and done, Alabama will have some sort of impact on his recruitment. But, it looked like, I think maybe the most exciting thing for Texas is that I think a lot of people felt like Texas and Alabama were the top two for Evan Stewart and that Florida was some sort of distant third. Well, I think everybody following recruiting was arguing about where Florida fit into the top two. Stewart comes out of this weekend saying that no, Texas and Florida are the top two. And, if that's the case, the best news out of this, if you're Texas, is that both of the top twos that Evan Stewart has have had Texas in it. So that the only school that is consistently in that top two. But now they got to show that they've got a good offense. Now they've got to have a quarterback that when Evan Stewart thinks about his freshman season, he's like, I am cool with wanting to go play with that guy. And, one of the things that none of these dudes yet, this is the elephant in the room. We can kind of close on this. I'm not trying to be negative, but there's an elephant in the room, right? Evan Stewart doesn't have a Texas quarterback yet that when he puts a head on his pillow, he can really say, I want to go play with that guy. They wouldn't say it about Casey Thompson yet. Nobody is. They might, right? We might get to October and everybody among the high school ranks will want to play with Casey Thompson, but they're not saying that yet. And Hudson Card doesn't have that kind of street cred inside the industry either. Like, he doesn't move the needle yet. He might, both of those guys might, but they're not yet. And Malik Murphy probably isn't that guy yet because he is to a very slight degree, but that's mostly with kids from the state of California. We've not heard a single prospect from the state of Texas other than Jordan Hudson, who's his 7-on-7 teammate, just recently decommitted from Oklahoma doing the horns down. we're not hearing from people like he's the Pied Piper. So, Evan Stewart, a guy like that, has Texas in his top 2. He needs to be able to come away from this football season with an idea of who his quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's absolutely fair. And I still think a lot of these kids are still going to take a wait and see approach. And, they may have had like, this was good. It sounds great, but you still get to kind of get in the feeling like, okay, it sounds great. Sounds good. I've got some time, so let me see how it goes. And then we start, we'll have the conversations of what those first 3 games need to look like. And from a, aesthetic standpoint and result standpoint, in order to kind of get that thing going. I think just what I was thinking about, Ketch, Jason had an update on BJ Allen, who had just went to Alabama. And then he said that they were dead in the waters. That was the only, but he was still a Texas commit, right? So but that was the only like definitive I've heard coming out of it. Like,
but Texas. I don't count recruiting updates from kids outside. I should probably clarify that. I only pay attention to the comments of the biggest kids that matter the most. So remember that big 6 that I came up with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those were I was looking for remarks this weekend from Kelvin Banks, who's been very quiet, but all indications are he goes to A&M this weekend, and we're going to know everything that we need to know about his recruitment out of that A&M. And he's the one guy of all the difference makers in the state that I think really definitely might make an early decision. That's maybe definitely that sounded
it's okay.
Very straddling the fence. I think he is going to decide. And I think A&M and Texas are his top 2, and they're going to be back-to-back weekends. And while I think Texas is the favorite in that deal, I do not underestimate A&M getting him this weekend and anything being able to happen. But when you look at everybody else, there seems to be a sense, even a guy like Bryce Anderson, who looked like he would be committing to Texas on his birthday once upon a time, has slowed his recruitment down. We may get to the start of the football season, and there may only be one guy, Kelvin Banks, who will have announced a commitment. That is possible amongst the real top guys in the state, which would then put a lot of eggs in this team has to be good basket, which is really interesting because it then comes down to the level of positivity that you have for Steve Sarkeesian in this program in year 1, right? Like, if you're then I think you're like, it's going to be fine because 9-3 is the basement. And that's a pretty damn good season. If you're like me and you're like, oh, I think it's going to be at least that good, but boy, it's not a stretch to say it might go slightly sideways. Then you look at the rest of these recruitments and you realize, there's a lot on the line going into this season that goes beyond 2023 recruiting momentum. How Texas finishes in 2022 is starting to look more and more like it will be connected somewhat to the success that Texas has on the field. And I think I would have guessed a month ago that it wouldn't quite be that important, because I thought about half of these guys at a minimum would actually announce before the end of August. But it seems like the momentum with the guys that look like they might commit, other than Banks, has started to shift into the area of they're going to wait and see. And even if kids aren't directly saying, no, I want to wait and see how Texas does, by waiting, that's exactly what happens.
The thing I'll close with on my end, Catch, and saying is that I one of the things I put in my Sunday pulpit this week is really, a roundabout way of saying like this year is really, really important towards recruiting. And then most of the times you get like a first year kind of pass as a coach. Like most people understand it. Like it's okay. You get time to formulate and get your own guys and all these other type of things. But the one thing, just the stat that I just think it's just worth pointing out, and again, we're just thinking about kids. You have kids, I have kids, a lot of our viewers have kids. Real simple, I said, if there's a kid who's 18 years old, okay, and they started following Texas football when they were 8, this is what they have seen over the last 10 years. 2011, 8-5. 2012, 9-4. 2013, 8-5. Followed by 14, 6-7. 15, 5-7. 16, 5-7. 17, 7-6. 18, 10-4. 19, 8-5. 20, 7-3. This is what they know. This is what these recruits know. And again, the other stuff, and we talked about this last week, and I kind of put that in the column. And that's for like seniors at 18 years old. The juniors who might be 16, I mean, they haven't seen a whole lot of good stuff, and they definitely don't know much about Vince Young. So I really think they've got to hit the ground running. It is, from a recruiting standpoint, I think it's so important, so paramount, just because the program has been in that like good but not great stage for so long. It's kind of like you can tell a kid about Nebraska's past glory, but all they do is look up and say, man, Nebraska really hasn't been good in a long time. You know, no matter who they hire, just if we look back and say, Nebraska, are you kidding me? Nebraska's what an amazing program that was, and what they had under Osborne. And guys, remember Tommy Frazier? And we could go back, right? But that's why I think 2022, they've got to hit the ground running. They really have to have a strong season. They probably need to start off 3-0. They've got to get some momentum going to make sure they keep this class together, because if not, I just don't know how many kids are going to be willing to give it a pass, especially the elite ones. You know, you'll be able to get those 3 stars, some of those borderline 4 stars, but the elite guys that you're wanting to talk about getting, going to be tough. So we'll be interested, Catch. It'll be interesting to see now, after our overreaction as Monday is done, how do our viewers react, and if there's some overreaction towards the basement/floor of what this team might look like.
I was just going to say, I know what everybody's thinking. Do not hit the thumbs down button just because Anwar picked this as the topic that led us towards not a conversation about the ceiling for this team. It was a conversation.
That'll be tomorrow.
About the exactly.
But tomorrow we'll do the ceiling.
Do not. Well, we put some water on those plans with that whole 12-0 slice would be really slow. Small.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. 12-0 is a lot.
All I'm saying is don't hit the thumbs down button, because we may have semi-depressed you a little bit. We weren't going for that. Anwar and I are not picking 7-5. Okay? No. Don't you walk away from this sad, but don't walk away from this dumb either. Like, hopefully you'll have heard something, and if you were like, that's impossible, you'll be like, oh yeah, the last 10 years. What was I thinking? But for myself and Anwar Richardson, tomorrow, it's a positivity. It'll be Throwback Tuesday. Nothing but positivity. We'd play some music, but then people get mad that we didn't have the rights to the music, and then we'd have to
shut us down.
Yeah. So otherwise, I'd be like, we'll play some music tomorrow to get everybody in a good. We'll figure something out. But hit that like button. Nevertheless, subscribe, even if you don't feel like it after the video. Until tomorrow, later.